I have a question for you. What was it like to be with Jesus when he walked among us as God in real human flesh? Our minds may run first to the extraordinary things Jesus did, telling a storm, just be quiet, and it did. Telling a dead child to get up, and she did, and so on. When the apostles tell us to be imitators of God, do the things he did, be the way he was, well, it can't mean turning water into wine, can it? But instead, live a life of love, because you find yourself so well loved by God himself. What we can hope to imitate, as we ask him to help us, is simply how Jesus treated people and how he was present with them. These things are extraordinary too, just in a different way. Here's what I mean. Think of the risen Jesus asking a disarming open question to those two distraught disciples walking to Emmaus. What are you talking about as you walk along the road? Notice the question, open them up and let them pour out their grief. Think of the more penetrating questions Jesus would ask people. The first recorded words of Jesus to Peter were when he asked him, what do you want? You can find times Jesus put words to what other people were feeling as he took the time to notice them and weigh their words and read what was written on their faces. Martha, he said, you are worried about many things. In one place in the Gospels we read, Jesus looked at him and loved him. And to think that what the man had just said was that he believed that he had kept the law of Moses all his life. Of all the moments to treat someone as warmly as Jesus did. Something about the sort of attention Jesus offered in that moment just overwhelmed the writer. It was something he could never forget. Jesus looked at him and loved him. Once you know Jesus and know his heart, you find you can open up to him entirely and tell him anything. He was someone that was safe to question with the hard questions at the bottom of your heart. I think of that when Martha dared to say to Jesus, Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. Or we read this priceless detail. She told him everything. That's in the account of Jesus healing a woman who had long suffered from some sort of blood disease. She told him everything. That must have taken a while. Jesus must have graced her with a warm way of connecting with her that told her, go on, I'm here, I'm listening. Tell me everything. What was it like to be with Jesus? Ask it another way. Ask, what is it like to be listened to be taken seriously, to be the object of the undivided attention of the Son of God? And then, when Jesus spoke, took his turn, he was able to speak to the deepest things people hide inside. Do not let your hearts be troubled. Trust in God. Trust also in me. These next 3 lessons are an exploration of active listening. We intend to offer people our full, warm attention and our deep and genuine interest to truly take them in. We hope to disarm them with friendly questions or challenge them with powerful ones. We can reflect on our words what we see in their faces. This is hard for you to talk about. Or, you really cared about her. In a way that can help people open up to us and can draw out their stories. We want to learn how to get down to what things are really about for them, to gain a richly layered understanding. Then and only then to say, may I share something with you? We can learn a lot about listening from the apostles. Everyone should be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry. That's James chapter 1, verse 19. In context, the brother of our Lord is deeply concerned about how we handle our anger or impatience toward people with whom we disagree. There's an area of communication study that especially deals with strong disagreement, and that helps us to imagine a better response than to immediately go on the offensive with a barrage of words, or to vent our frustration over people daring to challenge us. It is known as the art of ethical dialogue. Here are just some of its components. See if these responses don't help us to imagine what it can look like or sound like when we take the Apostle James seriously. Confirmation. We can confirm people even as we are in disagreement. We can tell them how much they matter to us, and we can comment on the good things we detect in their point of view. What you're saying is important to me. I really appreciate your honesty and how seriously you take these things. Here's the question. Must people agree with you as a condition they must meet before you will treat them warmly? Empathy. In this context, empathy means that we can understand what might make a people think or feel a certain way, especially about Christian truth, even if we cannot agree with them. Here's the question. As you consider where this person has been in life and what they've been exposed to, can you make sense of how they think? Would you think any differently if God had not revealed Christ to you by His Spirit in word and sacrament? Presentness. When people are expressing opinions that are offensive to all your Christian sensibilities, they deny God or do real harm to people, we might feel tempted to completely disengage with the conversation or even remove ourselves physically. Here's the question. When it comes to your longing to bring the truth to people in an authentic way that they can hear and understand, what are the reasons to remain fully present? Supportive climate. Given that people may need to hear the message of Christ crucified and raised many, many times before the truth breaks in through the working of the Holy Spirit, we want to give serious thought to how we can keep the conversation going over weeks or even years. We don't want our talks to be so obnoxious that a person won't ever want to experience us in this way again. Here's the question. Will these conversations be pleasant enough that people won't at all mind talking about these things with us again? Let's discuss this. Which of these qualities challenge you the most when you are in strong disagreement? Why? Please pause the video and spend some time discussing your answers to these questions. Allow up to 10 minutes for this discussion, and after the discussion, restart the video.
All right. So, but for just a quick review of what we watched, what examples did we receive for Jesus as a listener? Or maybe pick one that stood out to you. That either you as a hurting person would have appreciated, or perhaps that you as a speaker and a listener and someone who's going to share the gospel, that you think that is something that I could imitate even more. Okay?
Then also having a genuine sense of empathy.
Okay. Some people are blessed with more natural empathy than others. I wasn't looking at you, I was thinking of myself.
Some people are blessed with being able to have strong conversations.
That's
and
true.
being able to communicate well in a strong conversation, where a strong conversation, I would rather go out.
Okay.
So, there would remain.
Okay. Anybody else want to share?
I don't know. I think the one where he was talking to the woman who was bleeding.
Okay.
She told him everything. I've heard what everything is. It's really easy to tune out. When somebody decides they want to tell you. And not only did he listen, he actually cared. And he didn't just listen so that he could catch his way out.
Paid attention.
Others?
Kind of different question on point.
You can try.
So, sometime this is years ago when I was coming and you were
talking about Curtis?
Anyway, he was telling me on Sunday morning about how he was down there waiting, saying he was a student about housing, which is totally wrong because we try to get it. And I always wondered, because I was just trying to listen, not distract. So where is that line between, I could have come and said, hey, you don't mind. And anyway, it's along these lines of listening. It always bugs me. What is it?
So I'll turn this back around on you a little bit. Which of the examples that Professor Paustian gave would fit into that sort of situation? And that must not have been Curtis, because he would have had a hard time passing as a student.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I mean, maybe it's possible, but anyway, we do have people who come and stay with us for a time, and they're happy to hear the gospel and be welcomed into our community, and then they drift away. And
But anyway, the conversation is kind of
So I'm going to ask it again. Which of the examples from Jesus do you think would fit there best? If you didn't write them down, it's going to be harder. Okay, I'll go through the list. Or,
I was thinking the man who says, I've kept the whole law, and Jesus knew when he looked at him that whatever he said, he knew what was coming in that conversation, but he led with, he looked at him and loved him.
That's the one I was thinking of too. That Jesus knows not only is this man trapped in the delusion of his own mind, but really in a way, he's just blasphemed against the one standing there in front of him, right? The perfect Holy One, who is keeping the law perfectly, on his behalf is standing there. And this man has the audacity to say, all these I've kept since I was a boy. And Jesus looks at him and he loves him. And so if you turn that around in the situation where you know you're dealing with either a person who is not a Christian or a person who has very weak faith, who knows what they have been taught, where they have been taught, what other influences are on their lives, how can we react when we see something that you go, I feel like I need to correct this? What does Jesus see in that man? Yes, and someone who's truly trying his hardest and really wants more. And he just doesn't understand. And it's worth noting that Jesus doesn't just let the man continue on in his false belief. That he corrects him. But first he sees him. And he loves him. And I'm not going to say that it's easy. So is there a time to say, you know, that might not be the best way to go about it. Because you're deceiving the people who really want to help. And really in that situation, my brain would be tempted to say, and that's why I don't give to anybody standing on the street corner. Because I assume every one of them is has an angle that they're trying to push. I don't believe anything you write on your sign. That I think that people write whatever they want to get money. So I'll give to places that I know is going to do the thing that they say is. So that's what my brain would be thinking. And so I'd have to like slam on the brakes from running into that brick wall of judgment and love and lack of love. To look and say, this is a person who's really struggling. How can we build them up in their struggle rather than tear them down? Any other examples from the stories of Jesus' life that jumped out at you or stood out or said, that's either something that means a lot to me or that's something I really would like to work on applying?
And to continue this conversation, there always has to be a question for that person that gets to the core of where we are.
Okay?
And that's on the spot. It's sometimes hard to formulate.
I mean, Jesus knowing hearts really seems to help sometimes.
Well, so if I knew everybody's heart, I may be hurt.
That is true.
Yeah.
So he knew the right answer when he knew their heart.
But I think you are right that it's so easy to fall into the cliches, and we ask everyone, well, how are you doing? Joel asks me every Sunday that he comes in, he says, how are you doing, Pastor? And Joel, what do I always respond?
Well,
I usually say, I'm all right.
all right, yeah, something like that.
So
I'm not too enthusiastic.
all right. And I'll ask him, he's like, well, and sometimes you share and sometimes you don't. We use that how are you doing as kind of a throwaway. Sure. It's just a little small talk. Joel wouldn't really expect me to pour out my heart to go through the difficulties I had this week. He might not stop me, but maybe he will. And so, can we get a step beyond how are you doing? And listen for that detail that would open up into their heart. I think that's truly a challenge. But you think about what is it you were talking about? That's really not that deep a question, but you can see the conversation and the concern. Or asking Peter, what is it that you want? What are the 4 ethical dialogue components? Oh, they're still on the screen. I'm going to read them for the people who are watching at home. Confirmation, empathy, presentness, and a supportive climate. And so thinking about those 4 qualities, which one of those do you think challenges you most when you are in a strong disagreement? I'll share my answer first, and my answer is yes. Maybe the one that I can actually sometimes do is empathy. It's hard to confirm someone's feelings when we think their feelings are wrong. So, which ones challenge you? I think that's all 4 of them together. That would be the fruit of the Spirit required to accomplish confirmation, empathy, presentness, and supportive climate. Maybe some gentleness in there. That yielding spirit that says, your needs are more important than my needs right now. That's what gentleness is. Something that says, what you need is more important than what I need. Okay?
It's gotten really good when it's no longer on topic. Living out. Just being able to catch in and pretend like I'm still on board. Or I'm following along and then something they say makes me think of something else and something else and something else, and all of a sudden my days are over here.
Okay?
And I no longer have any idea what they said in the last 3 minutes.
I think presentness is hard also for another reason. Why is presentness often hard? What's it require? I mean, all these require this, but I think this even more. Time. If you are going to be present with someone, that means you have to wait it out. And I think of the woman who had bleeding, and she told Jesus everything. Do you remember the surroundings of that story? Where Jesus is and where he is going? He's in the middle of a crowd. Yeah. He's got the synagogue ruler Jairus there saying, my little girl is sick and dying, and he's in a desperate situation. He's trying to get there. They're in a hurry. And Jesus stops everything. Now, Jesus also knows when I get there, I'm going to be able to handle the situation. But he's got all this stuff going on, all these people around, and he says, I'm going to make sure I take the time so that this woman knows she matters. And I think about my own life, and I've always got someplace to be. And I think about myself as an evangelist, and there's so many people. Do I really want to spend 45 minutes with this person? Because that's 45 minutes that I don't have to go and try to find that person and 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 that person. You know, I'm on my way somewhere. I have my schedule in mind. Am I really willing to take the time to be present? Which other one's challenge? Especially now we can focus on the disagreement. I think the presentness is a challenge even when you're not disagreeing.
When you're talking with someone and you know they are flat out wrong, no matter what you say, they are so dug in. And it's really hard to listen again and again to the same arguments.
Okay?
Even more than listen to the same arguments. You have to cultivate the environment for them to want to talk. And our immediate
And they're saying things you don't want to hear.
Our immediate response, like just a natural response to people who are saying that we don't want to hear, is to shut ourselves down, and body language even just portray, I don't care what you have to say, or I don't want to hear what you have to say.
I mean, I think it's worth both the confirmation and then the supportive climax. Confirmation is Think about it at the start of the conversation. Kind of how we put it. And then the supportive climate overruns the whole conversation so that you can have more of this conversation. You don't have to confirm that they're right or support what they think or what they say. But you can't be mad at a person for feeling the way they feel, or for what they don't know, or don't understand, or haven't considered. And, I mean, people make, when we talk about the attitude of Jesus, be willing to say, I'm going to be willing to forgive the fact that you're wrong, or that you are not going to maybe treat me fair. That I'm willing to be mistreated in this conversation. So if I'm talking about some heated issue, and it's really important, this person says someone who thinks like me is an evil, wicked person. Am I willing to bear the brunt of their insult? Not to say that they're right, but so that I can find that question or share why I feel the way I do, so that maybe in a supportive climate, not one that says, well, that's so wrong. Let me tell you why that's so wrong. Let me take out my hammer and I will pound that nail in. That's what I think my brain is. If my brain is a hammer and everyone who disagrees with me is a nail. I don't, it's hard. But that's why I think it's useful to remember the mind of Christ, who is willing to be insulted.
So there were, Jesus is overturning the money changers. He had different reactions to different situations.
So, he was not, yes. So there are times where, this is not a time for a supportive environment where the rebuke needs to happen. John the Baptist didn't go and listen to King Herod's feelings about his relationship with his brother's wife. He simply told him to repent and got thrown into prison for it. But I think we need to consider this in the context of we're dealing with hurting people. I'm going to treat a false teacher differently. I might rebuke a fellow pastor differently than I would someone who walks into my church with their living boyfriend or girlfriend. Luther was patient with Philip Melanchthon, but mean to Carlson. That does take judgment, a judgment call. I see those as completely different situations. And one is very public. And hurting a great number of people. Versus dealing one. Any others? Otherwise, we can more than 10 minutes, so now maybe we won't. But we can listen to Professor Paustian.
Always be prepared to give an answer to everyone who asks you to give them reason for the hope that you have. But do this with gentleness and respect. That's 1 Peter 3, verse 15. The Apostle Peter is not assuming that people will be constantly probing our hopeful thoughts because they admire us and want the good things that we apparently have. Certainly that can happen, and we praise God when doors like that open for us. Further, many people who still live outside of Jesus can yet be remarkably kind and polite to us. They are not difficult to listen to or talk with at all. In context, however, Peter knows that Christians in this hostile world will be persecuted as we share in the disgrace of Christ. Given the times we are living in, we will encounter people who think we are ridiculous. They think we are what's wrong with the world. Gentleness and respect? When you do take the words in context, they are deceptively simple but truly radical ideals. People may come at us with arrogance or condescension, and we are called to respond with something else. Imagine how these two qualities might actually sound when we as the church are colliding, as the church must, with a skeptical world. Pause the video and share with each other what gentleness might sound like when talking to a skeptical unbeliever. Then share what respect might sound like. Allow up to 3 minutes for each. And after the discussion, please continue the video.
So, quickly, what does gentleness sound like to an unbeliever in a conversation? We talked about it a little bit in our in-between. Okay, it can be letting them speak and fully share. What else?
Not being too judgmental.
Okay, not being too judgmental. Well, that's a slippery word. Judgmental. Hard for us. Our world has a weird definition of that word. But I think you're onto something. Okay, there's accountability there. Mm-hmm.
Why they feel how they feel, or what they feel, or what they think.
Okay.
So gentleness, you know the certain things piss them off. Don't go there first.
Okay.
Try to take into account their, what you know about them when you talk to them.
If it's somebody that you have a history with, and an emotional history with, so someone that there's life experience that you've shared, and there's past hurt. The way you said that made me think there are times where we know where to stick the poker, where it will do the maximum damage. And that would be the opposite of gentleness. And I think sometimes these words are easier to describe than the opposite. So when I think, what does gentleness look like? It means I don't have to worry. And that means also, because one of the easy ways to win is to find that thing that shuts them down. Or, as you said, sets them off. But often it's to shut them down so that if it gets too sensitive for me, I can shut down the conversation by bringing this up. And then we're in a safe argument space, so to speak. We can argue about this thing and we'll both get worked up, but it really won't get to the heart, my heart. It really won't get to their heart. Do you remember what my definition for gentleness was? I said it in a sermon during Advent. And I said it again 10 minutes ago. Yeah, a yielding spirit. So, yielding, let the other person go. So their needs go ahead of yours. That's what gentleness is. If you think about it with a child, like a toddler or a baby, gentleness doesn't usually mean that you're barely touching them. Sometimes it means you're very firm, but you're only as firm as you need to be to keep that child safe or to provide for that child. And we all understand, like if I'm roughhousing with a 5-year-old, I understand that winning is not my goal. I can probably accomplish that whenever I want to, if I want to. The goal is that the child has fun. It doesn't mean that I'm always soft, because then the child doesn't have fun, it doesn't grow. But it does always mean that when it comes time, I make sure that child is always safe. And that's something we learn, and it's also something that we learn in conversation. That, yeah, I can be firm but gentle. Not going to yield the truth, but I'm going to yield myself. What about respect?
Acknowledge that their feelings are legitimate. I mean, not their feelings, but the things that they're saying can be wrong, but the things that they're feeling are legitimate.
Okay?
And to acknowledge that, and that those are important.
Mm-hmm. And I think just sometimes that, they may have considered something that I haven't. Somebody I've listened to quite a few of his podcasts who says that, well, he applies it to marriage, that you never actually want to win an argument in marriage. Because your goal should not be to have power over your spouse, but rather that you assume that your spouse has input that would be important. What's the point of having a conversation? If I know everything, then what's the point of the conversation? And right now, I guess I'm the one who's leading the conversation. But most times, the conversation is so that two people can learn from each other, because you assume that every other person has different experiences and has different knowledge than you do. And if you start with that assumption, that goes a long way to respect. This person might say something that I haven't thought of, or in a way I haven't thought of, or they have an experience that I've never had, and I can learn from that. And so I will respect them. All right, we have to move on.
Seek first to understand, then to be understood. You may be familiar with this principle that makes Stephen Covey's famous list of the 7 habits of highly effective people. I find it incredibly useful. Let's say someone is not a Christian and doesn't want to be. If we ask them for their reasons, they may say only a little, or they may have quite a lot to say. But are they being transparent with us? How much are they holding back? Why? The idea of seek first to understand is that we want to be able to explain that person's point of view as well as they can explain it themselves. This can take time, and it can take work as we try to draw out their actual reasons. How do they think about Christian truth? What have they experienced? What have they been exposed to that they find convincing? What does it mean to them? How does it feel? Where are they really coming from? Have they ever told all this to anyone before? I want to be able to explain it to them as well as they can explain it themselves. That may sound unrealistic. I can't be in someone else's skin. But I'm really trying to describe an ideal. What I'm saying is simply that I'm going to try. I mean, really try. I have so often had to realize, sometimes quite painfully, that my words were weak when I spoke from a shallow understanding of the person in front of me, or from a superficial grasp of a situation that confronted me. I worked hard to develop an instinct to ask, I wonder if there's more to this story. I bet there is. For example, if countless people reject the very idea of God because of the doctrine of hell or of divine justice, I need to know whether this is a rational problem because of some bit of philosophy they cling to, or a broken heart over someone who has died in unbelief. We want to develop an intuition about how people only slowly unfold their true selves and what things are really about for them. Maybe a person's life has been tragically difficult in a way that makes the love of God an incredibly difficult idea to grasp. I need to know that. And it isn't something someone just puts out there in the first 5 minutes of a casual conversation. We want to distinguish ourselves as people who will go further than most people would ever think you would ever need to, in simply saying to ourselves, for goodness sake, I'm going to understand this. As well as I can, I'm going to understand this. Please pause the video and turn to the section entitled Being on the Other End in your study guide.
I think we are going to have to sort of leave this as a little bit of homework for next time. And so this is where we will start. But thinking of a person that maybe the best listener you have ever known. I get to cheat because I get to see him on the screen. Although I've had other professors who were that good. But to think about the person who you would say is the best listener you have ever known, and what do they actually do that makes you think that way of them? The class he taught is interpersonal communications. You might know he's thought about this quite a bit, but a lot of it is things that we know when we like talking to a person. When this is a person who just makes talking to them nice. Or sometimes we know we're like, maybe I don't want to talk to that person, but it's not because they're a bad listener, but it's almost because they're too good a listener. It's like, I don't want to get that personal right now, and that person has that ability to get to places I don't really want to go. And those are the kinds of people that he's saying, instead of just saying, wow, that person's a really good listener, I really enjoy talking to that person, stop and think, well, what about that person makes them that way? And then what things from that person can I then learn for myself. That's your assignment for next time. I have